I don't like. I'm still trying to figure out 100% what it was that we got flagged for,
Right.
but you know, at this point, there's really not much I can do about it other than just, you know, there's really not much I can do about it at this point. So,
Yeah, just keep rolling.
yep, because I can
Mm,
sit here and waste all this time trying to get it corrected, and then we'll be at the end of the 30 days regardless.
right. That's true.
So, but how have the things been going? You still down in Nashville?
Yeah, still in Nashville. I guess it's been months since last time I did the podcast with you. So it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy how much
How much
time
is?
has flew by this year, but at the same time, it's felt so long. So
Yeah, I
I'm
gotcha.
pretty much the same thing. I'm doing a little bit of more local shows now than before, but pretty much the same thing day to day with, working from home and doing music from home too. So
Yeah. Okay. There it is. All right. Cool. Cool. But yeah, like before, I'll do an intro. I'll introduce you. It'll be a lot more conversational this time, just because since this is your second podcast, it'll be a little bit different than the first time. So yeah,
cool.
this all. So we don't need the air conditioning keep going on. It's like 70 degrees outside.
Yeah, nice fall weather here too.
So, all right. How are but everything's in Nashville's good. I heard you guys had another bad storm come through not too long ago.
We got some like rain last weekend, but besides that, it's been fine. I feel like the Gulf Coast has been getting hit harder than anywhere else. So
Yeah, very true.
yeah,
Very, very true. All right, let me share this. All right, cool. I tagged you. I hope I tagged your music page. I did. Cool.
awesome.
All right, I tagged you in the post. We're good. We're live. We're recording. Cool. And so if you are ready, we'll go ahead and jump into it.
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we're back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, a very returning special guest. We have Sarah Harralson. How's it going today, Sarah?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. Just staying busy, stuck at home for what's it been, 8 months now, I guess, at this point, 7 months,
I know. I think it's been 7 months. But yeah, I was just saying it's been a few months since I've done this podcast with
Yeah.
you, and it's crazy just how time is flying this year, but also feels so long at the same time.
Yeah, it really has. I was this morning, I was like, oh, when was she on? I was like, it felt like you were just on, and then I went and
Yeah.
looked, and I was like, nope, it's been good 4 months or so. So,
Yeah, that's crazy.
but first off, as always, thank you so much for sitting down, giving us the time to sit down and chat with you. Really, really appreciate it.
Of course.
Um, and it just kind of as like a refresh for all our new fans that may not know who you are. Can you give us kind of a brief breakdown on who you are, like a brief origin story?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Harrelson, and I've been in Nashville for about 7 years now as an artist and songwriter. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, so East Tennessean girl. And other than that, I made my way kind of working through on the business side of the music industry, and now I've just been releasing singles since signing with a new publishing company. So definitely been enjoying my time as a writer and artist since being in Nashville.
Gotcha, gotcha. Awesome. And you've been really busy since the last time we've had you on. You just released a new single. Um, what's the name of the single, and what's kind of like the story behind it?
Yeah, so last Friday I released my new single, Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll. And I wrote this with two of my co-writers, I guess a little over a year ago. And we were writing to the title, Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll. And we were just having a conversation about how all three of us are country musicians and performers, but all of us also really love the genre of rock and roll. And so many of us can relate to that genre because it's one of those kind of universal genres that we all love and we all have favorite songs from. So we just kind of incorporated song references from that genre and the feeling of that genre into this country song. And the song in general is just about, getting lost in music, and it has a romantic feel. And I think when someone listens to it, it can take them back in time to maybe music that sparked a romance or a romantic night. So I think it's definitely something we can all relate to.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And how long has this song been kind of in the works? Is this like a strictly COVID pandemic project, or have you been working on it since before the pandemic?
So we started tracking it kind of during the pandemic, actually, because we had Put a Rock on This Rolling Stone. The single before that was done right before COVID hit. We released that in June, but I guess a couple months before that, my producer had already started working on the tracks for Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll. And I think I had some scratch vocals on it. So everyone was just kind of doing the tracks for it remotely. And then I had to come into a studio to do vocals. So we just like waited, after the stay at home order and stuff. And when summer came around, that's when things got better. So I just went over and did vocals in his studio. And the great thing about studios is there's that separation between the control room and the vocal booth too, and then you can just Lysol everything down afterwards. So that was a kind of a pandemic project.
Okay, awesome. That's and it's always really exciting to see when, especially like when something like this happens and we're all kind of thrown on full tilt, not knowing what to do or how to adapt. Everybody finds a way to adapt. You know, just
Yeah.
finding a way to continue to do what you love, get out there and record it, even if you do have to socially distance or isolate or do everything remotely. Like, especially in music now, it's so easy. All you need is, like, I mean, you could probably get away with using a USB mic if you really had to, but it's,
Yeah.
especially nowadays, it's really easy. But the fact that you were able to get into a studio to actually record, that's really awesome.
Yeah, and the great thing about modern day recording is that so many of us have already been doing tracks remotely and then just sending them to the producer because it's faster and a musician can spend more time on a track and really perfect it rather than everyone being in the studio at once. I have my own recording set up here, but my producer has some really high quality stuff. So I definitely wanted, good vocals for a recording I was gonna release, but so it was great that I could go in, but we're all kind of navigating challenges with recording remotely too, and just kind of working with what we have for sure right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then what kind of, you said you wrote this with a group of writers and it was kind of like a writers round type situation?
Yeah, I wrote it with two other writers.
Okay, awesome. And what kind of went into that? When you sat down to write it, did you know you were going to write the song, or were you just getting together at, like, was the plan to sit down and write a specific song, or was it, hey, let's get together and see what we come up with?
It's usually always kind of like, let's sit down and see what we come up with. Sometimes we each have ideas in our phones, or just having a conversation can spark an idea. And I think this night, I think my producer had something about rock and roll on his phone. And I think as we started talking about it, that's when the song started to form. And we just said, hey, let's chase this.
Yeah.
So it's kind usually like a conversation that leads into let's start this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then have you obviously like live shows aren't happening at regularly, but were you concerned about releasing this during the pandemic? Had you thought about waiting until there was maybe some light at the end of the tunnel, or were you just wanting to get some new music out? What
I
was
was
kind of
more concerned when I released Put a Rock on This Rolling Stone back in June, because that song was done, right before the pandemic hit.
Mhm.
So that I was more concerned with that single because that's when we really didn't know what was going to happen. And by this point, when Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll was done in September, we kind of all knew what to expect at this point, and everyone's back to releasing music as per normal. So I didn't really have any doubt as to when to release it. I knew that it would be a good fall song. And, if we can't have as much live music, then people really do need some actual music to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, but have you been so during the pandemic, have you been doing experimenting with like the live shows and doing like the virtual live streams and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think I've kind of toned down on doing them as frequently as before. I think everyone kind of has because
Hmm.
it's at first it was like a constant, everyone's doing them. And now that smaller shows and local shows are starting to happen again, um, I feel like I and a lot of other people are just kind of doing a mix of some live shows here and there, and then a virtual show every now and then. But besides for in-person shows, besides playing like in Nashville, I haven't done any in-person shows outside of Nashville this year. So
Gotcha, gotcha. And, but there was a point there where Nashville started opening up and doing like smaller gigs. Were you lucky enough to get in on any of that, or?
yeah, I've done a write around. I did one solo actual paid gig in town too, and then I have another gig, another solo set planned next week. I think just kind of the issue is with paid gigs is
Mhm.
it's not really happening as much this year, which
Yeah,
makes it hard on musicians who usually make their money out
doing
of
paid.
town. And then also with the write arounds, it's usually just two people on stage right
Yeah.
now. So it makes it a little bit more um, weird, and you just have to be more precautious about it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Especially if it's somebody that you haven't quarantined with, or you're not around on a semi-regular basis, like you just don't know, you know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, uh, and it's weird because it's like I understand the venues they want to open so that they can get people in, and we don't lose more venues than we already have.
Right.
But it's got to be hard to go and ask a musician that hasn't worked in 6 months, 7 months, like, hey, you want to play a free show? You know,
Right. And that
it,
happens more so in Nashville because everyone plays music. So,
mm-hmm,
a lot of people are doing free shows in town, paid shows out
mm-hmm,
of town, but doing it so frequently in town can sometimes get old after a while. And then the other factor consider during this time is there going to be anyone at the show?
mm-hmm.
Um, I think the first couple shows I did this year after COVID was kind of weird because there weren't a whole lot of people at the place. So it's like, is this worth my time? And now people are kind of getting out and about again. So now it's a little bit more worth it to do the shows since people are
Yeah,
actually showing up.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just finally getting to a point where everybody's like, okay, enough is enough. yes, we're going to take precautions. Yes, we're going to socially distance. Yes, we'll wear a mask. But I think a lot of people are finally getting to that point where it's like, okay, I'm going to go out. Yes, I'm going to take these precautions, but at some point we've got to try and get back out there.
Yeah, you got
And
to. You go crazy if you don't.
yeah, absolutely. So what other than working on this single, this brand new single, amazing by the way. I had a chance to listen to it. Get lost in some rock and roll, which the title is very self-explanatory. Like you get
Yeah.
lost in, yeah. Are you working on a new single, or do you already have something in the coffer in the lineup for later on this year, or are you gonna kind of let this song live and
I'm definitely gonna let the song live for it to its potential for a little bit. I do have something new planned in the works.
Mhm.
I will be so happy to announce it soon, but you can expect to hear more about it kind of after Thanksgiving, so near the
Okay,
holidays.
cool. That's really awesome. And it's just one of those things because it's like with the singles, I know people are always like, oh, once they get to a certain point in the first one, they're ready for the next. And it's like I was having this conversation with a musician the other day about releasing singles versus like albums,
Yeah.
and he told me that he had seen, like, if you release a album, like right now, if you release an album versus a single, it's going to be about the same amount of time before they want to see some more work from you. So you're better off to take that out, like especially right now when people have nothing left to do. You're better off to take that album, cut it out, and release singles throughout the year, whether it's once a month, once every 6 weeks, whatever. And it'll keep people happy and engaged longer versus where if you release that full length album, they'll be happy for 2 months, maybe 3 months, but then they want to hear something more.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely at a point now where when someone releases an album, you've heard maybe half the songs on it already because we live in such a, single by single world where people just constantly want more content because of streaming. So it's definitely just the way you have to do it now. And when you're releasing an album, maybe only half of it's new. So it is kind of the model that I'm following by, but I do like to let the singles kind of breathe for a little bit before I put out a new one.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you have like the hopes and aspirations of releasing a full length album, like once you get back out and can play regularly or tour? Because that's the one thing I've noticed is like when you can go out and support a full album and go out and play twice a week, or like more than once just once in the year, um that like it seems to work a little bit better. So do you have aspirations of releasing that full length album, and or do you?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely want to, keep putting out some singles that I've had planned and starting in the works. And I think if it feels right, I'll kind of put some of those tracks along with new tracks on maybe a new EP or album because I definitely love the ideas of EPs and full albums. And it does make me sad that physical sales are kind of a thing of the past. And I used to always get CDs made of each of my EPs and albums. And
Yeah,
now I feel like that's not going to happen anymore when I do release a new one because just no one buys it anymore. And it makes me a little sad because I always like holding the actual physical
yeah,
album.
yeah. And like honestly, I'm really glad to see like vinyl is making a huge comeback. Like
Yeah.
I'm growing my vinyl collection now. So like anytime, well, I mean, before the pandemic hit, when I went to shows, if somebody had vinyl pressings of their music, that's what I'd rather have.
Yeah, I'm actually doing that with Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll. Anyone can buy the single on a 45.
Oh,
So
nice, nice. Are
yeah.
you going? What? Who are you going through? Is it somebody locally in Nashville? Because I feel like Nashville would have a local press, vinyl press.
Nashville had a lot of choices, but I wanted a little bit of a lower quantity because I
Yeah,
didn't know how popular it would be. I think it's Groove Cutting or something. I can't remember the exact name, but it's actually in Seattle. So, which makes sense because they're huge on vinyl too.
yeah, absolutely. You know, like with the whole punk rock scene and stuff they got going on up there. So, and actually,
Yeah.
it's funny because I've been kind of watching what musicians have been doing lately, and cassette tapes are making a comeback. Like people are going out and buying, because like they'll get like one really good mixed and mastered cassette, and then they'll just throw it in a tape duplicator and just duplicate their own tapes.
Yeah, that's cool. Is that like hip hop scene probably?
No, it's more of the DIY punk scene, just like the punk
Okay,
rock scene. But
that's
what's really
cool.
funny is like all the cassette tapes are so dang expensive that it's cheaper to press vinyl.
Yeah, which is crazy. And
Yeah.
then that also takes me back to when I had my old car to where all it took was cassette tapes, not even a CD player. So that's definitely a blast from the past.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, but what obviously we've been like in this pandemic lockdown situation for the last 7 months. What have you been doing outside of music? Like what do you do to just kind of escape, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I guess locally I try to find like newer places I haven't been to yet. And of course with safety precautions, I'll go check out new restaurants and stuff still. Because it's still kind of a hard time to travel to. So
Hmm.
I like doing that. And it's football season, and I love football, although it's a very, very strange season this year, and you
Yeah,
can't go to games. So
yeah,
I've definitely been watching the games and doing my fantasy football league, but it
nice.
does not feel the same this year
Yeah.
at all.
Who's your football team?
Titans, since
Okay.
I'm in Nashville, but of course, Titans have the worst reputation with COVID right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was watching. I've been paying attention to that. It's just like you know, it's just that weird thing because it's like when once if you're in a bubble and one person gets it, then it's just gonna spread. You know,
Yeah.
it's like there's just not much you can do about it at this point, unless somebody's immune or you know whatever. Um, but no, I've been definitely been paying attention to the Titans. I know I'm a Bears fan because I'm from Chicago, so
Yeah.
um, I saw like one of our practice squad members got COVID, and for whatever reason, it just said Chicago Bears player test positive for COVID, and it like that was the title, and I was like, oh shit, who's got it? And I'm looking, and it's like, oh, it's a practice squad guy, like
Yeah. They just make it seem more
yeah,
dramatic, but
like I'm sitting here, I'm like, wait, did who's got it? Like which starter? You know, like is it a starter? Is it a reserve? And then it's just like, no, it's a practice squad guy. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
guys.
which is probably the case with the Titans too. Or
Yeah,
because if it was a star player, they would have said.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then you'd mentioned, has fantasy football been something you've been doing for a while, or
Yeah, I've been doing it for a few years now. Last year, I won one of my leagues, so
nice?
it's something I definitely love to do. But I just feel very unmotivated with it this year, and
Yeah,
we don't really have. We either have very low buy-ins or
mm,
like not at all, just because we don't know what's going to happen.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like now that you mention it, I didn't even have any aspiration of signing up for a league this year. Like I was just like it became one of those things where I was really heavy into baseball because I'm a White Sox fan and the White Sox were doing really good.
Yeah,
And then before I knew it, the football season hit, and I'm like, wait, I should probably join a league. And then
yeah,
before I know it, the season starts, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to join a short season fantasy league. There's no point. And
right.
then I was just like, all right, screw it. And so like every once in a while I'll jump on DraftKings and just kind of do their week by week thing.
Mhm.
But that's so hard to keep up with because it's like every week I got to make sure I have a roster locked in by Thursday morning or something, and it's just like, okay, I'll do it when I can, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be working so far, but I guess we'll see.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. But no, it's you know, and if I feel bad because it's like fantasy football is something I've done every year, like every year since I was in like eighth grade. I've done it, and then this year is just like I'm not in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just hoping all of us will get our motivation back next year.
yeah, absolutely. But was there at any point during this that you were pondering moving back to Knoxville, or are you so ingrained in the Nashville community that
No,
that was never?
I'm so ingrained in Nashville that it's not really it was never really an option to move back. I've been so fortunate to have like a job to work from home during this on top of my music. So um I've definitely been very blessed during this time and haven't really struggled as much as a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, if anything ever happened, I could definitely, go back to Knoxville if needed. But yeah, Nashville's pretty much my home now.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one thing that you really miss about getting out and touring and playing outside of Nashville?
I
Like,
miss exploring new places. That's always my favorite part about playing new venues and
mm,
playing in places I've never been before. I feel like I traveled so much last year
mm,
compared to this year. So I definitely miss that and hope it can resume next year.
yeah. Where's one place that you haven't been that you'd really like to be?
A lot of the New England states I haven't really been to. I've been to Boston, but like Maine and some of the other New England states, I would love to just visit and play at some like places there, or even just breweries or wineries near Napa too. I think that
Mm,
would be really pretty. I'm sure they're struggling right now with the wineries because of the fires. So I feel like everything, no pun intended, is just up in flames. But
yeah,
I really do um, hope that they can get back on their feet quickly so I can, resume playing and seeing all those beautiful places again soon.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Is there any international place that you want to really get to? Because I mean, obviously, international trips are probably going to be a lot longer. Like we'll open up internally way before we can start traveling internationally. But do you have any aspirations of going international or?
Yeah, I would love to do like a UK and Europe tour,
Mm,
and just like do Ireland and in London and some other places in Europe and do like 2 weeks or some sort of longer length of
mm,
shows because I would love to go and see those countries and hopefully soon we can travel internationally to those kind of places
yeah,
again.
absolutely. You know, it's really cool though. Like especially in London and the UK, they have a very big growing country music scene out there. Like
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like I've had the opportunity to talk to and work with some of like really amazing musicians, and they all talk about leaving the UK to come move to Nashville like
Right.
when they can, and it's like, I, I mean, cool. Like I get it, but the UK scene is growing so much right now. It's just kind of like maybe stay out
Yeah.
there. Like they say the grass is always greener on the other side. So, yeah, like I mean, I guess you never know until you make the move, but um, yeah. So it's just interesting because they've got so many musicians that are growing out there, and they're really developing their own UK country sound. Like I was talking to one guy and he'd mentioned that um they don't like if they're really or not really UK country musicians, but if they're being authentic to themselves, they don't talk about the big pickup trucks, they don't talk about cowboy hats, they don't talk
Mhm.
about, wearing boots because that's not what country is to them out there. Like they're just
Right.
kind of really developing their own sound and what's authentic to them. So that like as an American country artist going over to the UK, I'm sure it would be really exciting and like just being able to hear and see experience like a completely different interpretation of what
Yeah.
country music is.
Yeah, that's what I love about, different countries. There's, everyone from every country is like usually from like a countryside.
Mm,
So they kind of know what the country is like, but like you said, it's different to them because it's not pickup trucks, etc.
mm,
So it's definitely their own sort of country, which I love. And a few years ago, I wrote with this country artist from Sweden, and she kind of had her own, idea of what country means to her, being from the countryside in Sweden. But she's like, I want to write an American country song, and it's just funny she said that because I knew exactly what she meant when she said that. I'm like, okay, so we need like beer and Alan Jackson and trucks in
yeah.
the song, and
Well,
that's basically what it was.
yeah. Well, and like the interesting thing even about that statement is like that's even a broad brush statement as well because like I mean you when they say American country music, you have an idea of what they mean, but
Yeah.
it like there's really no such thing as American country music because you've got like your traditional, you got your Texas red dirt, you got your
Right.
outlaw country, you got your pop, like your pop country, whatever you want to call it, so
Yeah.
there's definitely like all these different like subgenres.
Hmm.
And like even if you travel within the US, like coming from Nashville, let's say you come out here to Texas and like the country music they play out here is completely different than the stuff you'll hear
Oh
in
yeah, completely different. You really got to specify the subgenres now.
yeah, absolutely, which is amazing because it's like everybody's kind of got their own authentic feel
Yeah.
and and it creates more room. Well, in theory, it creates more room for everyone because it's like, okay, well, I'm a red dirt country artist, and it kind of gives them a pocket to
Right. And
sell it.
as an artist, when you submit your music to Spotify playlist now, it has you select up to 4 different subgenres, and there's so many different ones, like ones I've never heard of before. I'm like, I guess I'm this, and I guess maybe this too.
Yeah,
There's just so many.
yeah, absolutely. Who are you listening to right now as far as like influences? Who are you really feeling that's out actively playing? Who are you drawing influences from?
I'm definitely listening to a lot of Eric Church's new singles he's putting out, and I love what he's putting out right now. And what I love about him is he always has some sort of deep rooted message in each of his songs. And I think he's definitely hitting hard with just kind of the cultural messages right now and what he's putting out. And it's very meaningful. And that's what I love about that right now because we definitely need a lot of music with meaning right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I don't want to keep you too much longer because it is Wednesday night, hump day. Like I feel like that's still a thing people say. I don't know why, but what's kind of the plan moving forward? Not knowing what's going on, are you looking to book more live shows? Have you thought about getting back into doing like the live streaming? What's kind of your plans moving forward?
I think I'm just doing some small shows here and there in town for the rest of the year until we kind of know in the new year
Mm,
what it's going to be like for live music going forward. So at least for the end of this year, my plan is just to, keep on with the promotion for my current singles and everything I'm working on. So definitely working a lot in the studio still and writing. And then next year, once we have a better idea of anything, I really want to book a lot of shows out of Nashville, because I'm sure a lot of people will be doing that once other venues start rolling again.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you when you go out and play shows, is it primarily just you, or do you usually bring one or two other people along with you?
It's usually just me. A lot of other times, if it's not just me, I'll have one other person if it's just, an acoustic set. But yeah, I do a few full band shows here and there out of town and in town.
Okay, awesome. So it would it be uncommon for you to just randomly jump in your car and just start playing trying to book out shows and playing out shows when that's a thing that can actually happen, or do you like to plan ahead of time?
I
Uh,
usually like to plan ahead and get in contact with the venues a little bit before, just so I know that it's, confirmed and that the rate and everything is confirmed. And then I'll book usually like a series of shows
mm,
depending on how far I'm going. So that way, like if I'm playing in a lot of states far away from me as opposed to right near me, then I want
mhm,
to book more shows so it's more worth my time.
mhm, absolutely. It's always interesting because I talk to a lot of musicians, and a lot of them are very planned and calculated with their tours. It's like, okay, I'm going to plan out the tour and I'm going to be on the road for this many days and I'll be back, and I plan on making this amount of money. And then there are those few musicians that they're just kind of like throw caution to the wind. They're
Yeah.
like, they'll maybe book one or two shows and then just drive to that first show and then just book out a tour from there. And it's just like, and then when I get tired of playing, I'll just kind of go home. And it's like,
Yeah, I think that's great if you can do that. Kudos to them. I feel like I'm just really type A with planning out my, shows and everything and
yeah.
knowing. I guess I just like to know like where I'm gonna be next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very much in that same category where it's like I like to know where I'm going to be, but
Yeah.
then every time I try and do that, where I try and plan a trip out to a T, everything gets turned upside down and we're on full tilt, and it's just like, all right, I don't know where we're going to be tonight, but this is where we're at right now. And so it's like I plan out these trips, and it's just like that first day, it's like, okay, all the plans out the window. Now we just got to kind of figure out
Just
the rest of
rolling
this
with
trip.
it.
Yep, we're rolling with it. Like our trip last July, we had a plan of going from Roswell, New Mexico to Salt Lake City, Utah, up to Montana,
Mhm.
to Las Vegas, and then California, and then we were going to go home. We get up to Montana, and we didn't really understand or realize how far Salt Lake City to northern Montana was.
Oh yeah.
Like we thought it was like a 12-hour drive. It ended up being an 18-hour drive. And it was just like, oh, this screws everything up. And then we end up getting lost on our way back down because like up in Montana, nobody's cell phone or nobody had a
Right.
signal. And so like the GPS one time just randomly cut off. And I was sleeping in the passenger seat, but our audio engineer was sleeping in the back. And so we had our production or one of our production guys just driving, and then the GPS unit cuts off, and he's so afraid of getting lost that he doesn't even think to wake us up to try and figure out where we're at, that he circles around, like drives around aimlessly for 4 hours, and we end up like way north of where we need to be or where we were. And it was just like, okay, well, we're not going to Vegas. I guess we probably won't be going to California either because
Just all the different directions.
yeah, we're at least a day and a half behind at this point. And then
Yeah.
at that point, it was beginning to be hurricane season because I was living in Florida at the time. And there was a hurricane approaching, and I was like, look, We got to get back to Roswell as quickly as possible because I need to get back to Florida as quickly as possible. Because if I get caught on this side of the country when there's a major hurricane about to hit, I need to, because it was like one of those
Right.
weird early season hurricanes. So it's like, okay, we're going to drive
Yeah.
home and we're going to,
Yeah. Last time I played up in Montana, I knew like when we were in the Airbnb, I'm like, okay, there was not even any signal getting into this state. So I'm just gonna like screenshot the directions on my phone before a gig because
yeah,
I know, and then that ended up working. And
yeah.
then after the gig, it was pitch black dark, and I was glad I screenshot the directions. But we were like, what are we looking for our turns? Because when it's dark there, it's dark.
Oh yeah, it's, and the other crazy thing is we were up there in mid-July, and normally any part of the country, mid-July, it is 100 degrees any time of the day or night. Montana, at about 10 p.m., or no, at about midnight, we wrapped everything up. We went outside and it was easily 40 degrees outside
Oh
in
yeah, when I
mid-July.
played there end of May, like a year ago, it was snowing the whole time. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I was like, wait, are we in the North Pole right now? Because it was very cold out here. And, like, we didn't pack hoodies or anything because we didn't really think of it like that. And we get out to the car and I'm freezing. You could see my breath going. And all the guys that we were working with, they're like, oh yeah, we should have said it gets really cold here at night during the summer. Like any time of the year, it just gets really cold at night. And I'm like, yeah, that'd have probably been nice to know, but it is what it is. But
Yeah.
it is just funny because I will always tell that story about the time we got lost in Montana.
I think everyone who's been on Montana in Montana has got lost in Montana for sure.
Yeah. And what's funny about it though is why the guy that was driving now, anytime we go on a trip, he brings his old Garmin GPS unit, those old like
Yeah,
TomTom guides or whatever.
that's awesome.
And it's so out of date. Like so I live in Central Texas and they all live out in Roswell, New Mexico. It takes me 7.5 hours to get from Waco, Texas to Roswell, New Mexico.
Wow.
They came out to visit me one time. It took them 10 hours because they were using that Garmin GPS unit and it didn't know any of the new roads. And he came to me, he was like, how long does it usually take you to get here or get to Roswell? I was like 7.5 hours. Like it took us almost 10. And I'm like,
Like
well,
MapQuest taking
yeah,
you like the back ways.
yeah, absolutely. So it was just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like took you a long while to get here. But
Yeah, it's like road trips with my mom growing up when we had like the Garmin GPS. And even I think at that point you had a GPS on your phone, but my
yeah,
mom was always set on printing out directions for MapQuest and going that way. And it would always add on an extra 3 hours.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. And it's just so funny how far all that's come. Like, I remember going on a road trip with my grandparents, and they had like the old atlas, like paper book map, and they would just sit there and map out their directions. And like looking back at it, it's like, how did anybody do this? Because these maps make
I know.
no sense. You
I would have
know,
just been constantly lost.
yeah, that or you'd have to like you just have a really good sense of direction and be able to be like, okay, we're on this road, we're looking for this road, and then just have somebody looking out for you.
Yeah,
You know,
that's too much work.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I want to once again, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Um, where can everybody find you online? Where can they find your new single? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, you can find pretty much all socials is under Sarah Harralson. Um, and then my new single, Get Lost in Some Rock and Roll, is on all streaming and listening platforms. So you can pretty much check it out anywhere.
Awesome, awesome. Well, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody.